on in Bojo, Mr. McLeod Mondaya, and today, as of now, this is the final lesson for this unit. And so today we are learning about Nishnaabemwin relative roots. And so basically, what we're learning about today is how to be specific in Nipissing Nishnaabemwin. So when we start getting into specifics, we start utilizing our relative roots. And so that's what we're going to be learning about today. So what are relative roots? So relative roots are how we talk about specifics in Nishnaabemwin. So relative roots can refer to the manner to which something is done, the location, so if something is happening from there, towards there, or it's a place of action, the quantity, number of times, and the degree to which something happens. So relative roots often take the form of prefixes, so those go at the front of our verbs. When present, relative roots change our B form grammar patterns to C form grammar patterns. So that's like B form with some initial change that happens to the beginning of the verb phrase. And that again happens to the first vowel sound. So some of our relative roots have a particle form. A particle form is where a relative root can be used as an independent word separated from our usual verbs or verb phrases, whereas other root words can't stand on their own as independent words. Sometimes relative roots can be built right into the word, and sometimes they are hidden in a word so well it's really difficult to perceive them. So what are the relative roots? So the following are the relative roots most dialects use, and Nipissing does use some of these, but a few are different. So the first one is zhi, or some dialects that drop vowels will say zhi, and sometimes when it's built into a word, it'll be an in sound or an n sound. The initial chain version is either ej or n, and so this means how, the manner to how it's done, can also mean towards a certain place, and is sometimes used as a command softener. Now, because in this unit we don't have commands, we're not going to be using it as a command softener in our worksheet today. So that one is exempt from our work today. Next is unje or nje. Sometimes when it's built into a word, it sounds like und or nd, and the change version can sound like wenje, enje, or end. And so the meaning for this one is the reason or why. It could also mean from a certain direction, and it can also mean for, F-O-R. Next one, we have dasa or daswa. So it's change version with the initial changes endasa or endas, and sometimes ensa. So this meaning refers to number, so many times, or every time. Next one is apiche or piche. Sometimes in words it sounds like apeat or peat, and its change version is pronounced epiche or epit. So this one, the meaning of this one refers to the degree, the extent, so much, and can also mean comparative. So if something is happening so much, that's like the degree or an extent. Next one is a k or k. And then when it's built into a word, sometimes it has the O's changed to W sounds. And so when it's changed, it could sound like echo or ek. So its meaning refers to since, length, times, and can mean usually or used to. And I believe this is the last one, daje or done. When it's built into a word, sometimes it'll sound like done. So its change versions are endaje or endan. So you'll notice with a lot of these relative roots, we have with the change version, there's either an E sound at the front because of the short vowel sounds, and sometimes we'll just tack on an EN sound instead of changing the vowel that we see here. And so daje or done refers to place of. So this one's more of like a place of where a verb is happening. So now that we know our relative roots, what are the Nipissing versions? So the following are the relative roots Nipissing uses that I've been able to decipher. So we do use eje or ije, but we use the vowel drop version, zh or n sound. Change version is eje or n, and it means the same thing, how, manner, like how something is done. It can mean towards a certain place, and it can also mean a command softener. So that's when you're just like, you ask someone to do it, but you ask them in a more kind of polite way. Next is nj or nd. Change version is wenje, enje, or end. It means the same thing as the other ones. Reason, why, from a certain place, and for, F-O-R. So like this is for that, an example. Next one is nsid. So this is where we see a change. Instead of indasa, we have nsid. And it's the same for either the prefix version, which is the first one, and then the root word version, this is the second one. And so its change version will either sound like nsid or ens. And so this can mean number so many times and every time. And you'll notice that ens, when it's tacked onto a verb, means every time. As far as I'm aware, it means every time. It could have others meaning, but I'm not aware of them. Next one is piche, and we have that secret A there, but we get rid of it with syncopation, so piche or peat. And so its change version is epiche or epit, and again, it means the degree, extent for something to happen so much, and could also be a comparative. So when you start comparing things to other things. Next one is ku. Change version is eku or equa. And so its meaning can be the same, since, length, times, and sometimes usually or used to. And so this is the most drastic change. Instead of daje, we have a ch sound. And its change version is enche, meaning place of. And so I noticed that for a lot of Nipissing Ojibwe, when there are words in other dialects that have a D-A-Z-H sound, Nipissing reduces it to a CH sound. And so this happens in a lot of our verbs too, and can be the connection between those and other dialects. So now we're going to go over each relative root and how they're used in a variety of ways and what they mean. So je can mean how or manner, how something is done towards a certain place, and a command softener. So this first example here is a prefix version. Mi ketingo ejem gising ip quaquid. And so that means the ball fell really hard. So this is referring to how or the manner to which the ball fell. It fell really hard, ketin. So that's like a hard impact. And so because we're talking about that, we need the relative root eje. And mi plus B form is usually the grammar pattern, but since we have the relative root here, it changes to C form with initial change. So we're talking about how hard the ball fell on the ground or whatever. So that's the how or the manner. So another example here is a prefix version. Pquaquid gijim gisin is sining. So the ball fell towards that rock. So this is where we're using je as towards. So we use it as a prefix. And so we're talking which direction the ball fell, and it fell towards like this particular rock that we could be pointing to. Next is a root word version. And so, using the example from our Bojo speech, zhi-how, and it means blank is how I am named or called. So again, this is a how or manner translation, where zhi or is in this example is used to talk about how we are called. And the particle version is our command softener. So migo jewi snin means why don't you eat? So instead of commanding someone like eat with an exclamation mark, we're suggesting to them, trying to be a little bit more polite. And so we're softening our command. So migo jewi snin means why don't you eat? And so I've tried to highlight zhi and its meaning in Ojibwe and English in the blue there, and the same thing with the other root words or relative roots. Next one is nje, reason why, from a certain place, or for. So in the prefix version, we got migo pquakwed ganjij bop teg isining. So the ball rolled from that rock. So we can see here that nje refers to from. And so this is a lot of this is based on context and how we understand things. So, and then one of our grammar patterns, onto wenje, so that's our relative root. Onto wenje I'm guessing ip quakwed. Why is the ball falling? And so we can see here that nje refers to the reason. I guess you could also interpret this as where did the ball fall from? But again, it depends on context. We have a root word versions here, and we have two examples. So in my Bojo speech, when I'm speaking, I say Nipissing Nishnaabemwin, Gitganing Donda. And so both these refer to from. So nje and und are the examples that we went over earlier. And so you can see here that when it's built into a verb, you can have either unje or und. And so they both refer to from. So I'm saying I'm from Nipissing and I currently live in Garden Village or from Garden Village. And the particle version here is taken from a document Nipissing published about their year-end review or something. And so from it, I was able to find an example of for. So, in do nsid-number on ausag jemnado kinagego migwewin in jisam takmikwe. So what that means is we acknowledge the Creator for the gifts of Mother Earth. So this nj part means for, and so we're talking about the Creator, or acknowledging the Creator's gifts for Mother Earth. Next one is nsid, which means number, so many times, or every time. So for the prefix version, I'm using an example from our Bojo speech. Ondimnik nsid-number. How many winters are you, or how old are you? So here it's referring to a number, where we're asking about a specific number. And next is another prefix example. And so nsimdana and do nsid-number is. So I am 30 winters old or 30 years old. So again, referring to number. And so another prefix version, ensagishkak, means every day. And so this one, when we use the prefix ensa for C form, it changes it to every day. So gishkat is our verb for day, and so ensa means every day. And so another root word is nshwaswe nsid-number. Nshwaswe nsid-number means she or he has 8 legs. So again, referring to number. And so talking about a spider here having 8 legs. Next, we're talking piche, so the degree or extent so much, and comparing stuff. So prefix version, wasem zinigan piche nishin. So this translates to this book is so good. So this is what we mean by degree or so much when we're talking about something, the degree to how good it is. So piche nishin, it's so good. Here's a relative root. Here's a root word example. Gdo piten mego. And so in this version, or in this sentence, it means you are thought of so well. So this is more of a positive affirmation or interpretation. And so we can see Pete meaning so. So again, the degree or so much. So you're thought of so well. Next is a particle version. So Dark Souls Nwach Zanagat Peach Dash Pokemon. So from here, that is translated as Dark Souls, the video game, is more difficult than Pokemon. So we can see Dark Souls, Nwach, more, Znagat, difficult, Peach Dash, Pokemon. So Peach Dash, Pokemon is how we can use it as a comparative particle. And so that's what we use in Nipissing. Other dialects use P dash. And so in Nipissing we use peach. Next is k. It could mean since, length, times, usually, or used to. So the prefix here, gakumajim neseg im dweveshigan, means ever since the phone started working. And so we can see in C form here, double I is changed to double A. And we got our B form suffix. K refers to since. So ever since the phone started working. Next is another prefix, gikojibopte ip kwakwood. And so now we're talking about a length. So that's as far as the ball rolled. And so we can see here k is referring to length. Next is a root word, and this is subject to change because I didn't get confirmation from our Nipissing speakers yet, but in other dialects, this is something that I suspect Nipissing would use it as. So 6 foot in the cause means I'm 6 feet tall. So here we're talking about length. And so as soon as I can get a Nipissing version, I'll change this. So a particle version. This one is debatable because of the difference between syncopated dialects and non-syncopated dialects. So in non-syncopated dialects, they would say ikka, but this relative root is supposed to be akka. And so I just included this because it kind of follows along with our relative root interpretations. And so it's subject to change. I might take it out in the future or I might keep it. So this is how we use k as used to. So TikTok, TikTok kogi jinka de Vine. So what that means is TikTok used to be called Vine. And so k in this version means used to. And it's a particle. It's a word on its own. Here's another particle that's, again, because of the ikka and akka, it's debatable whether I should keep it in here, but I kept it anyways. So yeah, I might drop it in the future. So mi goin ma ko gamewang. And so in that one, it means it usually rains here. And so k, again, a word on its own referring to usually. And so we got a prefix here version. So nijing ngiwi sin means I ate 2 times. So nijing refers to 2 times. But when we apply the changed version, eko nijing ngiwi sin means the second time I ate. So here we can see the changed version on this number with a vowel or consonant ending. And changes it to 2 times I ate, the second time I ate. So this is where a k or k can refer to times. All right, and the last one, ch, which means place of. So we got a prefix version here. Magi che adak seip quakwad. Here is where the ball was stuck. So this is the place where the ball was stuck. And so that's when we're starting to get specific about where the ball got stuck. And so another prefix version, enchawisning, means restaurant, so place of eating. So wisne refers to he or she's eating. And so encha is our prefix for making it place of. And then our velar consonant is indefinite actor, B form. And so sometimes you might hear this encha. The CH is can be swapped out for a J sound, as is pointed out in our sound chart. And so here's another example with the root word version. Chi ke, she or he is playing, like in a certain place or place of where she or he is playing. So we can see here, usually other dialects would say daji ke, but Nipissing uses a CH sound in place of DAZH. So daji ke can mean she or he's playing in a certain place, but in Nipissing we use chi ke. So when does Aandi mean how, why, when, and where? So using our relative roots, we can translate Aandi as different words. And since wagnen and wanen can be translated as what and who, it's only natural for learners to think Aandi means who, what, when, where, why, and how. Now that we are aware of our relative roots, we have a better understanding of when Aandi can mean all of those words depending on the relative roots present in the form of prefixes or root words built into the verbs we use. Keep in mind, relative roots usually change our grammar patterns from B form to C form, so we will often see initial change. For example, Aandi plus B form means where, but if a relative root is present, like in the form of a root word, or our grammar pattern changes to Aandi plus C form means where. So Aandi plus ije plus C form means how. Aandi plus nj plus C form means why or from where. Oh, sorry. Aandi plus je or nj or ch plus C form means where is it directed to, je, coming from, nj, or happening at, ch. So our 5W questions and how. So our 5 W's are who, what, when, where, why, and how. So the first one here, when we ask who, we use wanen plus C form, means who. Wagnen plus C form means what. Aandi P plus B form means when there are no relative roots, and then Aandi P plus C form means when relative roots are present. Aandi with je directed to, nj coming from, ch happening at plus C form means where is such and such happening. Aandi plus nj plus C form means why or reason. Why is that happening? What's the reason? Aandi plus je plus C form means how. So this is how we ask how questions. So these are how we ask our 5 W's and our how questions. We use wanen, wagnen, Aandi P, Aandi, and then our relative roots, je, nj, or ch. All right, so when do we use relative roots? So we use relative roots in the form of prefixes, root words, and sometimes particles. They are used for talking or inquiring about specific characteristics. Inquiring about specifics is when we use the 5W questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Some specifics relate to the manner or how something's happening, the location, whether it's coming from, towards, or the place of. When we're talking about quantity, number of times, length, and the degree or extent of how something is happening, how much something is happening. And they often change our grammar patterns from B form to C form, so we apply initial change that we learned in our last lesson. So, miigwech pasindueg misaye aja. Thank you all for listening to me today. That's it for now. And so that's our lesson. We're going to move on to our worksheet for today. And so we have multiple choice for our first one here. So aja, if you don't know what it means, we can always look it up in the dictionary. Command copy. Click the magnifying, command paste, hit enter. Aja means already or now. So still, there we go, be already. All right, so I'll leave the rest of these for you guys to do on your own. All right, number 2, reorganize the Ojibwe words, prefixes, and suffixes so that the Ojibwe phrases match the English translations provided. So here's our English translation. Last night, the young man's phone fell. And so I know we don't, a lot of this is stuff we've already went over. And as always, grayed out letters will be dropped. And letters with a dash in front mean it's a suffix. And parts of words with a dash afterwards mean it's a prefix. So we're looking for a word to start off here. So we should be familiar with the word last night since we've used it a bunch of times in this class. So it's debikung. So debikung is our first word. The word for young man. So far this word seems the least familiar, so let's look it up just to make sure it's young man. So shkinwe does in fact mean young man. So we're going to put that word next in our translation. Translation. Shkinwe. All right. So we're talking about the young man's phone. So young man third person, his phone is fourth. So we need his fourth person, which is his stuff, his phone. And that A is grayed out because we're going to drop it. All right, and so we need our fourth person suffix marker. Gi is a prefix. Un is a suffix that attaches onto our fourth person markers look like plurals, and so an looks like a plural. And it's a suffix because it's got that dash in front, so we're going to use that one. All right, so next, I guess we could use that I as our demonstrative pronoun. It's just an independent word. It's got no dashes in front or afterwards. So that probably goes right here, right in front of our fourth person. All right, so we got I suffix, gisin is our verb, and then gi is our prefix. Now, according to our lessons, gi is a prefix. That means past tense. So since we're talking about last night, we're talking about something in the past. So that would be the next logical thing to write here. And so tense markers like gi are always followed by the verb gisin, but we got to get rid of that I. Oops. And lastly is the single I prefix, which is our fourth person prefix for our VII words that end in N sounds. So, the bikung shkinwe im dweresh chignan gimgisne. So that means last night the young man's phone fell. All right, so I'll leave the rest of these for you guys to do on your own. Make sure to follow what I've done here with your understanding what our prefixes, suffixes, and if you're unfamiliar about fourth person, I would suggest going back to our fourth person lesson earlier in this unit. I'll leave the rest of these for you guys to do. All right, so what is initial change, and what are some examples of English words where we change a part of the word to another sound? So initial change, go back to our last lesson, is where we change the first vowel sound of our verb or verb phrase. So that means we change the prefixes first vowel sound instead of the verb if a prefix is present. And so some English words that I can think of where we change vowel sounds are, or just any sound. Trying to think off the top of my head what we covered in the last lesson. Mouse versus mice. So we change that ow sound in mouse to an I sound, mice, or I sound. So that's something you can write in here. You can provide your own for number 3 here. All right, so match the vowel sounds to the correct modern initial change sounds. So we went over the older style of initial change versus a more modern style in our initial change stuff. So when these vowel sounds, when they're changed, which ones they'll use. And so single A is often replaced with an E sound. So, it's either so this is a hanging E. When it's an E with a dash, we can use that, or we can use a E or hanging E. So this is one of the answers here. Oops. E or F. I'm just going with the first ones that pop up. All right. So what are the functions of C form? We went over that in the last lesson. They change verbs into nouns. They change things into past completed actions. We use them for grammar patterns and whatnot. So again, going back to the last lesson, when do we use the suffix gin for C form? So that's when we change verbs into plural nouns. This is the suffix we use. All right, so moving on into today's lessons. When do we use relative roots? So in the beginning of this lesson, we covered relative roots. We use them for talking about specifics in Ojibwe. What are the 6 relative roots we learned? We learned about zhi, nj, piche, nsid, and chi. So those are the 6 relative roots we learned. All right, so match the meaning to the relative roots. So zhi is our first one. Let's see here. One of its meanings is towards or to such a place. So put a B here, and then you can fill out all the other ones that apply to zhi. All right, I'll leave the rest for you guys to do. Ensa has its own particular meaning, so make sure to remember which one that is from our lesson. What is particle form in relation to our relative roots? So remember, particle form is where we is a function that relative roots have, where they can be used as a independent word on its own, separate from other roots. So which relative roots have particle forms, and what do they mean? So I went over as many as I could think of or come across in my learning, which relative roots have particle forms. So that's when they're used as words on their own. If you can't remember, I would suggest going back to the lesson and listening for that. So how do we use relative roots to understand the meaning of the word Aandi? So what does Aandi mean or Aandi mean, etc.? So remember when we went over Aandi plus all of its variations like Aandi, 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 etc. Aandi plus B form means when. So when does grammar pattern when is it formulated like so? Aandi plus C form means when. So what would make it turn into C form? Wonder what. All right, number 14. Akanota ne ajagna shimian. So that means translate these into English. So we got Aandi, who, what, when, where, why, and how. And Aandeg imzinegan. So we're talking about a mzinegan, which is a book. All right, so we got Enondeg. And so we know Aandi is like plus B form, but we know since we're dealing with relative roots, B form changes to C form. So this E is there, and then G is the suffix. So our verb must be nonde. So let's see if we can command copy, paste that in the dictionary. All right, so I forgot to include this word, but in the dictionary, but nonde refers to how. It's got that N sound in front, and then something is colored. So how is the book colored, or what color is the book, is the answer to this translation. So we can see here how when our verbs have the relative root ishe or n built in, change that I sound to that secret I sound to an E because of initial change. And onde eje or onde in can mean how the book is colored, or more plainly in English, what color is the book. All right, so I'll leave the rest of these for you guys to do on your own. These all have relative roots in it and related to today's lesson. So follow along with how we went over each root, relative root, and apply your knowledge to the English to make sense of it. So I believe this is the last activity. Yeah, it is. And so Akanota ne zhi-how. So we're translating into Ojibwe. All right, so what does the book look like? All right, so we can either use Wagnen for what, but since we're using our relative roots, I want to use Aandi. And then since we're talking about looking like, how it looks, we'll use our relative root, eje. So let's look for the word look like, or look. See here, we're looking for a VII, look. All right, so because I forgot to include that one in, I'll make sure to include both these verbs in the dictionary before you guys get to work on this. So the actual verb for how something looks is just give me a sec here. Yeah. All right. So the verb for how something looks is zhi-how when we're talking about something inanimate. And so because it's got that zhi in front, that's our relative root. We change that secret I sound to an E sound. This is a D ender. So we're going to Thanos that D and replace it with a G sound. So on to zhi-how. And then what are we talking about? A book. So on to zhi-how mzinigan, or you can include the demonstrative pronoun. So on to zhi-how mzinigan. What does the book look like? You got to treat your patience on that last one. I'll make sure to include both words in this worksheet in the dictionary. And miigwachmin sinduyega nongam. Thanks again for listening today. Bama p koa minim. I'll see you later.